My name is Dr. Rick Seguil.
And action. Hey, Jay had a... This is Kirk, man. And action. Hey, everyone, it's Dr. Rick. Happy holidays. So, Stephen had a question on what is the best weight that one should be. And it's a loaded question, but I'll try to explain it. If this is the first time you're finding me, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and the alert button to find out when new videos get posted. And I'll be doing a lot this winter because I'm just inspired to make changes myself and for my patients. And there's a lot of data that's being released that's pretty decent. Some of it is not so good, but I can sift through that for you. So best body weight. And I put here for me, not me being me, but Stephen. Because everybody has a certain goal. And I'm not saying that you should all hit a BMI of 23. So I put a couple of things here. Body mass index is what we classically use, have been using, no, I should say haven't been using, but in the past we used to suggest height. And there's a formula, height to weight ratio. I should say height to weight and ideal. It used to be measurable number, but because of the advent of information data rolling out, there has been a direct correlation to having a certain BMI, that's height to weight meters squared, which is really goofy, but you can check out Mayo. I think Mayo has a pretty nice BMI calculator, and they've over the course of the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a direct correlation between what an average American disease process begins at as far as BMI and when a BMI is usually going to be associated with no disease at all. So this is good. Hopefully I didn't confuse you yet. But so instead of saying for 5'10" I should be this amount, you have to have a formula or an algorithm to produce the numbers that hopefully will be low risk. So, in a nutshell, across the country, the United States, there has to be, if you can attain a BMI of 23 to 25, then the likelihood is that you'll be okay. So, plug in your numbers, your height and your weight to a BMI calculator and see if you're 23 to 25. That is awesome. If you're 25 and over, then I would say we might want to bring you down below that. And this is why, is because, again, as you get older, even if you're not having any diseases, if you are floating high, no diseases, no abnormalities in blood testing, you're just floating a little high, say 26, BMI 26, during a physical with me. Blood pressure's fine, everything else is cool, blood tests are all cool. I still say that as you hit the next decade, there's going to be challenges associated with that decade. Whether it's in your 30s going to 40s, your 20s going to 30s, your 50s going to 60s, or you're, like with Stephen, your 60s going to 70s. There's a ton of crap that's come my way. So as of 2020, I'm going to be 58 years old. I have 2 years before I hit 60, and I've already seen several of my friends die. I've seen a number of friends and relatives all contract disease. And it's, you know, when you turn 50, it's like you all hang out, and by the end of the day, everybody's talking about their pills. That's just not, that's discouraging. I would rather have my patients, or my friends, talk about their vitamins more so than their pills. Or, as we get really healthy, I'd rather have my friends and patients talk about their diet and their exercise more than anything else, or the meditative practice, but that's a tough sell. Anyway. The idea, Stephen, is that we have to get to a BMI of 23. And here's the other catch. Most of the time when I say you have to be a BMI of 23 to 25, I usually get this. I haven't had that kind of weight since I was in high school, and that's fair. Again, this is just a goal. Whether we tangibly or theoretically hit that goal this year, it's just the goal. So if we're going to beat disease, again, the diseases start to roll in so it's tough to notice a disease process as it first begins. It's easy to notice the disease process when it's blossoming. So no question, when you're having chest pain, shortness of breath with exercise, ankle swelling, you're probably having heart failure. Now don't go run, everybody that's listening to this, don't go running to the doctor, but If you have no symptoms at all and you're just a little winded, then it's fair to assume that you don't have the disease, but I don't want you to get to the next decade of life and suddenly be slapped in the face with, okay, now you got it. So what do? We pay it forward. I just did a video for my Facebook community and I talked about this is winter, let's pay it forward and get to a good weight or get to a good nutrition practice before Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, Christmas and Hanukkah, or Christmas party for the office. It's usually going to be associated with imbibing more food, desserts, more food, just hanging out, talking, chips, nuts, candy. And then on January 1st or New Year's, it's usually going to be a little bit of food and a lot of alcohol. Both of those are big hits. And if you wait until after the holiday, you will probably be guilty and you'll probably be having to catch up. So a lot of my folks that have been really good will gain, 3 to 5 pounds over those two holidays. And then you have to start the 2020 year with the diseases from the spring, summer, or fall of 2019, plus additional 5 pounds. That just doesn't make sense. So just like investing and putting a little bit away for retirement, it would be a shame that by the time you retire, if it comes time to retire and you make it, you use all that money for medical bills, and all you do instead of traveling the world, giving it to your grandkids, buying yourself a nice retirement home, you have to now see a whole bunch of specialists, have a whole bunch of procedures, and spend on co-pays for medicines that are probably going to be increasing in price. But don't worry about that. Again, let's stick to more of the hard facts and the short-term run. I would work on BMI and lowering the weight. Now, if you can't, and BMI there's an equal association between BMI and weight, but this is just a different kind of measurement. So, second thing you do, if you can't figure out the BMI, or if you haven't dented your BMI, and you're changing your waistline, then that too could mean that your muscle's building, because muscle is more dense than fat. When you lose muscle, you'll lose weight. But if you lose fat, you'll lose weight. If you gain muscle at the same time you lose fat, your weight will stay the same, but your waist will change. I just had one of my college university deans. He's staying the same, but he's able to knock down his weight. You see his belt buckle, it's really decreasing in size. So I give him props that he's making the right changes. And hopefully we'll see a little bit of the girth of muscle. It's harder as you get older to see muscle responsiveness because it's very subtle. Just like diseases, they're very subtle, but I'd rather have subtle than being hit hard with a disease. And you'll never have that as far as muscle growth, but you'll never have a sudden growth of muscle unless you're testosterone deficient and we fix the testosterone, or you're hormone depleted and we give you hormone replacement. But the other option, aside from measuring the waist, is something called a waist to hip ratio. That's a little bit more complicated, but that's what doctors usually try to calculate. If you're getting to a certain point, usually it's 0.7. I wouldn't worry about this. Don't worry about this. It's a little bit harder to calculate. I just want you guys to worry about this. This is more of what we try to calculate. Then I'd like to compare and do a waist to hip ratio every 6 months or so, just to see if we're moving along, if we are not making any dents in the BMI of the waist. Next thing that we do is something called a DEXA scan. DEXA scan typically is for osteoporosis, but only one in Illinois that I know of, that's $50 at Rockford Ortho Illinois in Rockford for $50. They'll give you an assessment. It's not to be done that often. I had mine done last winter. I'm going to repeat it after the holidays are over. But it measures fat, and I think it's probably one of the most accurate and accessible ways to measure fat properly. But here's the thing. You don't just do one and you see. You do one and then you compare. There are variations in the different machines, but and there is some radiation, so I wouldn't want you to get too exposed, but I think one and then make your change 6 months later to a year later, do another one and compare, see if you're in the right direction. I'm doing it mostly because I like to self-experiment, and I want to see if this fasting mimicking diet that I've partaken in is making a difference, and I think it is. It's making a difference up top as far as my muscle responsiveness, just like when I was in my 20s and 30s. But whether it's melting away visceral fat, we'll see. I'll post it as I go. There's also a bod pod that measures specifically weight, but the only one I know of is at Benedictine University. I'm sure there are ones downtown, but they're not really accessible unless you're part of a study. So hard to find that, but accurate. Calipers that you see done in gyms, not accurate at all. But they are helpful if you're doing an onward measurement. So they're not that accurate because it's user dependent. However, if you do it before you initiate a treatment plan, an exercise routine, and nutrition change, and then you do it 6 months, 3 months to 6 months later, you should see a difference. If you don't notice a difference, I might go to one of these more fancy tests, or measurements. But I think it's a little bit wrought with error. But I still say that it's a good measurement in addition to a couple other things, maybe blood test wise, to see that you're progressing the right way. And then there's something called a dunk tank. I have not seen anything like that around. That's probably one of the most accurate, but it's just hard to find. So I think what is the best weight for me is a loaded question. And even the BMI. The BMI is meant to scan and give suggestions across the nation. And it's not fair to apply general statistics to the individual. So it's kind of like my friend Deepak would say, if you know the average temperature for a city in this time of year, and you say, hey, what's the temperature outside? You can't go with the average. You have to see what the temperature is today. So you can't go with the average as far as what you're supposed to be. You have to see specifically what the patient does, what the patient's hang-ups are, what the patient's positives are and successes are, and kind of manipulate all those together to come out with a recipe. All those ingredients have to be manipulated to come out with a recipe of success for beating the diseases. That's essentially what we're talking about. Now, if you have symptoms, that's totally different. If you have the symptoms, we go through the symptoms, go through the medical diseases, trying to find your best lifestyle. But if you're symptom-free, doing okay, and you're not feeling anything, then we have to go with average statistics, put it into the specific patient's formula, and then come out with an answer. So hopefully, Stephen, that gives you an idea. The rest of you, if you have your own way of finding your best weight, then please put it down below. Otherwise, I'll put some videos down below that I mentioned that might give you direction or help you push past and zoom past your stuck point, because a lot of us get stuck. But don't fret. We all get stuck, but the idea is not to go back and do the same techniques and procedures and routines that you did before, because even if they do work, if you push harder, the likelihood is they're going to fail. If it didn't sustain you before, don't do it again. Think of something else. If you can't think of something else on your own, you come and see me. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of a help. Don't forget, you're going to have to calculate a couple things on your own. If you can't calculate, get somebody to calculate for you. So thanks for watching up until this point. Otherwise, I'll see you at the next Minute Clinic.